Yeah, we're going to be talking more about the 2024 season to date. Since I'm running behind, I'm going to wrap the receivers and offensive line all into one video. And it turns out that there is a bit of a significant connection between the two, so I don't know if I would have noticed that if I wasn't trying to wrap them in. In the meantime, this is WVU Football Going Deep, where we try to look not just at numbers, but past the numbers. And I am Forrest Poston. Enough of that part. And please subscribe, share, make comments, click thumbs up, click the notification bell, tell your friends, all those things that help the video get more attention, give me a chance to get more subscribers, and I do need around 65 or so subscribers to get to 500, and getting to 500 would hopefully be a very good thing for me. I appreciate if you do help. Now, wide receivers. No real surprises there. If you've watched the games, you might guess that Clement, Ray, Taylor, and Gallagher are the top receivers. In terms of targets, receptions, and yards. And I suppose one surprise is that Preston Fox has been targeted a lot, but not many receptions. For whatever reason, he and Green have not been able to quite get things together. And Fox was out for the Kansas game, so puts him a little behind everybody else. And, Clement also, he leads in yards. He leads in yards per catch. I didn't double check, but he probably leads in yards after the catch. And a lot of people now are referring to him as wide receiver one, and some saying clearly wide receiver one. One game. He hasn't been bad up for the Kansas game, but the Kansas game was a big game for him. Now, Ray was actually open just about as much, and if Green had managed to get off one pass when he was hit as he threw, Ray would have had almost as many yards as Clement on fewer catches, and he would have been over 100 yards, same as Clement. So let's not go claiming wide receiver one just yet. And as I've said before, I'm not that crazy about having a wide receiver one. Clement having a big game was critical, but so were the catches by Taylor, Gallagher, and Ray. The ball was spread around, and I still say any given game, any of those guys could be wide receiver one, hot hand. And I think that's how it's going to play out. I've said that before. Good chance that Oklahoma State's going to be prepared for Clement. Now, of course, if you are wide receiver one, you have to get open even when the team is looking for you, or at least take enough attention away from everybody else so that they get open. And if Oklahoma State wants to pay special attention to one receiver, hey, fine. Other guys will get open because we have a whole bunch of good receivers. Number of drops has been down, particularly among those top four receivers. As far as the transfers we brought in, Bray has not popped. He's had 2 long receptions, but only 2 receptions. And I think he was listed with a couple of drops. Not quite sure why it hasn't worked out yet. Robinson wasn't necessarily expected to be a big contributor early because he wasn't in football shape when he got to camp. That's because he wasn't in anybody's spring camp. And it seems no matter how hard you may be trying to work out, if you are not actually on a team, you're not in as good a shape. So he's really just kind of winding into shape. Of course, had that wonderful catch against Pitt that went to waste. And he was out for the Kansas game. Well, nobody has asked why yet. Original assumption was injury, but nobody actually knows, and it hasn't been mentioned, but he was out. So we'll see how that goes. I do expect him to play an increasingly large role as the season goes on, particularly because he has been the best blocker among the wide receivers, knows how to use his size. Now keep in mind, with the top 4 receivers, 1 is graduating. 2 are true sophomores, 1's a redshirt sophomore. So, and we do have guys like Farmer and others coming up. So wide receiver is looking pretty good. As far as depth and location of the receptions, it's a nice mix. And Green has, for the season, gone intermediate and deep middle a good bit. Yeah. The idea that he does not go over the middle is a fallacy. And especially anything between the numbers. He actually goes between the numbers a good bit more than he does outside the numbers. Ray is the only big receiver outside the numbers. I'm going to kind of come back to some things with the wide receivers after I talk about the offensive line. We'll get to the connection. The offensive line, in terms of PFF grades, and all of these numbers do come from the PFF website, the offensive line has actually been grading out very well most of the time. Now, I broke it down looking at run blocking and pass blocking, and part of the thing is each player has been off at some point. For Milam, now Milam, off for him is a little bit different from most guys. His pass blocking graded out against Pitt at 69, which is his lowest for pass blocking. And it is below, his normal. Run blocking against Pitt, he graded out below average, 58.1, which is really unusual for Milam. Remack, bad run blocking against Penn State. So Hubbard was lower against Penn State. Malone was actually well above average against Penn State, but he was the only one whose run blocking was really, he and Yates were the best run blockers. That's a surprise. Passing, like I said, 69 against Pitt was Milam's worst grade of the season. Remack had a bad time with pass blocking against Pitt, and Hubbard was average. Malone was actually a bit below average. So you can see kind of where the Pitt lost, excuse me a moment. A number of the linemen had their worst game, either run or pass blocking, in that game. but most of them, and I didn't even write the Albany numbers down. I'm not looking at that. But pretty much everybody except Hubbard. Well, no, excuse me. In the Kansas game, Yates pass blocking scored, below average. And Remac's run blocking was just average. Hubbard was just lurking around average for both run and pass blocking. And if you want to be a top team, average isn't a good enough score. We have to be getting up in the 65 plus area consistently to really do well. And we're mostly there. There were, if you count run blocking, pass blocking, all three games, it works out to 30, stats. There were, I think, 8 times that somebody graded below average, and then a few more where they were right around average. But most of the time, they're grading out pretty well. So the results should be better than they are. Why not? Well, if you look at the team grade, pass blocking, run blocking, it's lower than the line grades, which tells you somebody other than line isn't living up to the standard. And it turns out that it is most of the receivers and both of the primary running backs. Donaldson is average or slightly above average on run blocking, and he is bad on the pass protection score, and White is hideous. White's pass protection, I think I listed that when I did the run game, but it is just, it's like 38, something like that. That has to get higher. The backs have to block. And I mean, those of you who keep asking about using 2-back sets, Coach, it was Brown or Scott or both who said last year that you can't use a 2-back set unless the backs are willing to block and good at the blocking. So now last year Donaldson had the excuse of his shoulder, and I don't think they wanted him to do a lot of blocking, but Donaldson, White, and most of the receivers have to block better. Okay, that was either a spam call or, but turns out my phone is downstairs. I forgot about that, so I'll wrap this up fairly quickly. Ray has been okay on some of the blocking. He did better against Kansas. Clement's blocking improved against Kansas. So signs that they are picking it up. And of course, if you're going to be one of the top receiving guys, you got to be one of the top blocking guys to stay on the field. Robinson, he hasn't played a lot of snaps, but his blocking scores were well above average. So he's doing some good things. But yeah, White was 34.6 on his pass blocking. Traylon Davis, Very low pass blocking, decent run blocking. Uh, Taylor, same thing. Of course, I mean, tight ends need to block on some of the passes. Um, but that's where it stands. The line, they're not quite everything we hoped or everything we need. Hopefully, they are going, get better as the season goes along. Whether or not we need to replace Hubbard at guard isn't clear. Got one or two guys who are going to be good there, but are they good yet? That's something they'll probably, have been looking at this past week. But the problem isn't really at the line. It is running backs. It is wide receivers. And of course, wide receivers, I covered that on the one film study, cost a really good gain on the next to last drive against Pitt. So it can be the difference between a run that gets stuffed and a run for a first down. Can be the difference between a run for a first down and a run for 30 yards or a touchdown. So that has to improve. Has to improve if we're going to win enough games. Okay, guys, I got to get busy. You may hear Reggie in the background complaining. And I am way behind on a whole long list of things. I don't even have time to write the list down to know how far behind I am. So thanks for coming by. I will be switching over to talk about the year-to-date for the defense. And in the meantime, so long.